Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatvam Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrutatuhe Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So welcome to our Bhagavad Gita lecture where we are discussing about chapter 9. And of course, this is a very important chapter because it really gives us an idea of our goal of life, So we will get into that directly. So far, we have this is just the summary of it. From when we started, we talked about the fact that chapter 9 actually gives us the absolute knowledge, which is a secret. And then from there, what is a secret? He starts again with the very, very highest level. You will see the same kind of philosophy that Krishna follows in all the chapters. He will always start off with the highest knowledge. He expects that we as human beings are very, what should I say, very smart, intelligent. We can just grasp it right away, whatever he's saying. So in this also, you see the same thing. He starts off by saying the highest knowledge about really the what is our nature and how our nature is the same as the creator. And who's the creator? The creator is that infinite Lord. And that infinite Lord is the one who actually pervades through everything. So that's how he starts off. But then after that, he realizes, well, let me come down one notch lower. And then he starts to talk about that, well, you might be wondering if that is the case, then what is this universe where I'm living? How is that connected to that absolute Lord? So then he starts to talk about and says that he himself or he, she, it, however way we want to look at it, is the material cause and is also the efficient cause. So he comes into all that. And then he starts to explain the relationship between where we are today and that absolute self. So where Brahman is that absolute self, Prakriti is the one which is that absolute self in the form of a form. So then, when we think about forms, obviously the forms have gunas, and therefore we have the sattvic, rajasic, tamasic gunas, which constitute that Prakriti, another form, another word for Maya. So then, he talked about so much, and then he comes to the aspect of saying that uh, because of the fact that we are so enamored or so excited and so enthused about this whole Prakriti, the Maya part of it, we are not, he is not recognized. So he says in this 11, 12, and 13 about the fact that, because of that, he's not recognized. And then he comes to discuss about the people who do not recognize him. So in a sense, all those people who think that this material world is the one that gives them happiness are the people who do not recognize him. So that is where up to 13 we saw. So Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. This is a very famous, beautiful quotation from Kenopanishad. Why did I put this up? Because trying to show that this aspect of that Brahman, that Tadeva Brahmam Tvam Vidhi, one has to keep that Lord in front of me. That Lord itself is the goal, and that worshipped, one has to know that God. That is really our destination. So that's what he's trying to say. Uh, so in this chapter 9, he actually goes into really describing more about that goal, about the definition. And if I were to say that God is Brahman, which is infinite, I cannot really get it, right? So therefore, he brings that aspect of God in the the lower form of the God, the lower form indicating that lower form which has got a form. So that absolute Brahman is formless. That is really, truly our final destination. But because it is infinite and because it is something which doesn't have all the properties that we are used to, therefore we are not able to recognize. And so the formed version is what we are used to, and that is the idea for us to form our goal and destination. So because I do not know that absolute God, and many times, which is what in Shlokas 12, 13, he showed that many times, because that even if that God were to come in the form of a person, yet I do not recognize that God, because my life is such that I am always worried about small, small things. Because of that, I end up doing what I do. So he says that ignorance of that God is really the cause of all our problems in life. Okay? Because I'm unable to recognize that absolute self, because I'm unable to recognize that absolute self when that absolute self is in the form of like Krishna, Rama, all those gods, or even coming down to the level of human form, like any of the great Mahatmas who have come into our lives, because I'm unable to recognize aspect, that is our thing. So we have become so enamored by, if I were to use, like I was telling you about that, I gave this talk on digital minimalism. I've become so used to knowing how many likes I have received. And boy, I can tell you, it is so easy to get into that world for all of us, right? Because of this phone, really this phone that has been given to us, which we tend to take a lot of pictures, and then when we post it into Facebook or Twitter or anything, and I see how many people have really viewed it. Forget about likes, even if the fact that they viewed it, for me is a big thing, right? So our lives have become to that extent. So it is Maya on top of Maya. As it is, we're living in the world of Maya, where all the material objects are giving me the glitter. On top of that, I have now introduced in our lifetimes, because we all have lived at a time when there was no phones. Forget about that the phone had that ability to get into social media, Twitters and all that, but we didn't even have that. So we have created a Maya on top of Maya. So you can imagine for our grandchildren, what more is coming, right? And I can Just another example I want to give you is of today's world. Yesterday, I was in a Zoom meeting with one of my students. So we had the meeting, and she had asked me to enable something about enabling a summary of the Zoom meeting. Like, imagine if I had enabled the summary of this discourse, right? This lecture that I'm doing here. Suppose I had just enabled, in fact, I probably should have looked at it and I should have done that. It would have been a great test. You know what it does? It was amazing, uncanny actually. So I was just having this discussion with the student about her paper and what she has to do and everything. The summary that it gave me was amazing. It said, Sunitha and Swati discussed this. Then Sunitha and Swati decided these are the action items that they are supposed to follow up. Sunitha and Swati discuss about the research methodology. Under research methodology, so it was like almost a 3-page points of all this. So when you look at it, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Now I don't have to take any notes down at all. I can just read this, right? So this is the next step of Maya, which is happening. And this is only the beginning, okay? There's so many other things that artificial intelligence is doing, and all this within like a year or two, right? And now that Elon Musk and all of them are involved with this, who knows where it's going to go. So what it is doing is, now, is that good or is it bad, right? That's a question that may always come about. Again, I have to bring this chapter 6, Uddarit Atmanatmanam Bandhuratmatmanastasya, which is, it is a friend, but it can also be an enemy. Okay? It is a friend because when I need it, it makes my life simpler. And perhaps it is helping me to push myself from doing this mundane things like spending my time writing notes and all that, right? So that is a great thing. But I should get so enamored by it that I stop thinking. That is the thing. So ignorance of my true goal is the problem. That's why I put this up. At the end of the day, I have to be very clear what my destination is. And so this chapter 9, especially the shlokas which we are coming to, the 14 through 19, which in the section we are in right now, is really giving us a great feel of that goal which is beyond the 5 senses. So today I'm using my 5 senses, and ChatGPT and AI is taking over that 5 senses and creating more things for me, which is preventing me to use my senses. But I have to consciously bring myself back from all this and keep in front of me what is my true goal. Because again, sorry, I'm using my same thing from yesterday's lecture of digital minimalism, is that if I don't do this, I can become more and more. So things like depression and anxiety and all these things which is happening to, it's really on the rise. Why is it on the rise? Because I'm more and more dependent on all these gadgets and these things, which is taking me more and more away from people. And when it is taking me away from people, it is actually taking away from me looking at the people as a form of God, you know? So our scriptures is taking us back into pushing us into looking at it. So our step in our evolution is, first I look at myself as an individual, then I look at myself as a collective group. I dilute myself in the group and think that the whole group is also me in a different form. And I go to a next level where I even drop that form, and then I realize that I'm beyond form. That's the evolution we have to take. But what is happening is the other way, which is, not only do I think of myself as an individual, but I completely disregard there's somebody else. So through all these likes and dislikes and everything, not like dislikes, there is no dislike, or maybe there is a dislike on Facebook and Twitter, I don't know. But through these lights, I have created a very different version of myself, and I want people to like that version of myself. You see? So anyway, not to go too deep here, but I will just, I wanted to give that summary as to why it is important. Chapter 9 is important, you know. So we went through all this last time also, but this part, before we come to that developing bhakti for that God, we went through these shlokas where after Krishna explained about the fact that I pervade into everything, then if the question of creation comes into play, here he's trying to show in these shlokas 7 through 9 about creation at the end of the day is, of course, Brahman is the efficient cause, nimitta karanam, but the upadana karanam lies with Brahman in the form of Ishvara. Ishvara is the creator of the world, so he is the upadana karanam, or the material cause. So we went through all this aspect of what is creation. Then the question would come is then why is Ishvara really interested in creating in this world? And there he says it's not that Ishvara by himself wanted to completely create. Of course, we may say that it's the play of Ishvara or play of Brahman is why we have this whole world. But in and through all the joys and sorrows and everything that we all experience is really the collective actions of all of us. So that is where he says, by himself, he's not the one who's doing it or everything. He just provides the energy, or he provides that illumination, if you want, you know, that enlightenment. All that he provides, just like how sun gives all that illumination for things to grow. But the sun by itself doesn't get affected, right? So that is where he says, I'm a karta, I'm a bhokta from that point of view. Okay. So then he says about Maya Adhyakshena Prakritihi. So it's only in his presence that everything is happening. Just like in the presence of sun, everything happens. Under this one, producing the moving and the unmoving, but because of this, the world goes on and on. So he says that. Then in 11 to 13, he talks about, how people get enamored, that aspect of it. So he says about this, he calls them mudaha, and again showing that people are deluded by their own maya. Just like how today's Facebook and Twitter and all that, I post something on the Facebook, then what happens is I look for how many people are liking it. So I have created a version of myself, I put it up there. Then I want people to like that version of me, right? So it's a moha, I have done all this. So uh, now this idea is, why is Krishna going to so much of time to change our perception of Ishvara? And the purpose is that today we are living at the level of our body, mind, intellect, and we think everything is that. And because of the fact that I'm living at that level, I'm going through all this pain, agony, everything that is, I'm not, see, today I'm supposed to be somebody who should be smiling, laughing, enjoying life every second. But if I look at myself and if at any point I feel that I'm not doing it, then I have to question, why am I doing this? And we can easily find that the reason why I'm doing it is I have identified myself at the body, mind, intellect level. And by identifying myself, I tend to go through the ups and downs, because as the minute I identify myself, I immediately will go through the ups and downs. And because of the ups and downs, I feel that I'm the one who's doing it. So that is where we came to. Now we come to the aspect of how who are those people who have recognized so far that everything in this world that I'm living is temporary, and all these joys and sorrows that I'm going through are things that I'm going through because of my previous vasanas. So who are those people? So before we come to that, I just want to pause and ask you if you have any thoughts or anything you want to share or any questions.
Harvom, things on
Yes.
the chat GPT are, some of the things, they are true. And even the CEOs like of the Facebook, and then, others, they openly admitted it's
Mm-hmm.
affecting the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, I mean, uh, yeah, the digital technology has brought some uses, like, for example, there are apps on Bhagavad Gita, there are apps on many texts. There's so much advantage, but again,
Mm-hmm.
on the on the downside, uh, yeah, it's affecting. So yeah, and that's a good example. Thanks
Mm-hmm.
for bringing it up.
So I was reading some, since I had to prepare for this talk, it seems like, for example, and this, because of all this, I'm actually observing my own self. And sometimes, what is that? This beautiful word which came here is avashaha. Like, my even without my even doing it, I'm getting caught up in it. And I see that happening even to myself, So there's a what is that? Maya dhyakshe suyate sacha hitnani kaunti jagat parivartate avjananti mam mudaha ashram moksha. Um, where is that word? Without even us really knowing what is happening, we're getting caught into it. So the thing that I read in this things was, even one, suppose, I'm preparing for this Bhagavad Gita lecture, okay? And my mind probably gets a little tired and I want a little bit of a distraction. And suppose I go into Facebook, okay? That one distraction actually takes about 23 minutes on an average. I mean, this is, of course, an average. They've done some studies. One may say that, oh, really, it doesn't really take me 23 minutes. One may say this, right? But this is kind of an average they found. It takes about 23 minutes to get back to where you are. So you can imagine how much of time you're losing with just one distraction. And it's not one distraction that takes us away from something, right? It's so many. So if you were to multiply everything, you can see how superficially we are studying things. Anyway, yeah, Geeta, you wanted to say something? So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Yeah.
Meena.
Can you show me the screen about her BMI? I think I missed
Yes,
it. BMI. Yeah,
yes,
we mistake that our body, mind, intellect is everything. Okay.
right, right. I think I know many of you here are already familiar with it. So bear with me if I'm repeating something here. So the whole idea here, Meena, is let me just explain what these words mean here first. Okay. So first, let's start at the level of BMI. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, as a jiva, okay, as a human being, right now I have a body, right, with its hands, legs, and the five sense organs, all that I have. So that is my gross body, which most people identify can look at me and relate to me. Now they cannot relate to me at my mind level. Only I know my mind, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And my mind is the one which is really the driver for all my actions of my body, correct? So
Yeah.
my mind, for example, the minute, like right now, I got up to put my AC on because it's hot. So when my body gets hot, my mind immediately is asking me to do this, right? So that is, the mind is an immediate interface with all the sense organs. But then you have something called the intellect. For example, my intellect, is another form of my thinking entity, which basically told me, do you really want to put the AC on right now? Isn't it going to disturb your flow of thought? So the intellect was trying to kind of push me a little bit to hold off, but then at some point I gave into my mind. So this is just to give you a difference in the thinking entities between mind and intellect. Now, with these three equipments that I have, what I do is I take on the role. I take on three different roles when I'm interacting with the world. So the world is comprised of the objects, everything, all this moving and not moving parts of the world. That is all the objects of the world. Okay. Now, the objects of the world are perceived only at the body level, through my eyes, through my five sense organs, which are my jnanendriyas, and my karmendriyas, which is my hands and legs. Through that, I actually take on the role of a perceiver. So this level that you see, the PFT, is the role that each of the equipments are using to face the world. So as a perceiver through these sense organs, I perceive the objects. And at the individual level, at my mind level, I actually can feel the emotions. For example, when I see the sun rise, I feel so good, so that is the feeling as entity in me. Okay. And then I am also a scientist. So when I look at the sunrise, I try to gauge, how much did it rise at 6 a.m. today compared to yesterday. So all that is my thinking ability. So this part of it is the role that the body, mind, and intellect takes up as a perceiver, feeler, or a thinker. Okay. As in using my intellect, I'm a thinker. At my mind level, when I identify myself, I'm a feeler, right? And so in this whole world, so the bottom three OET refers to the world in which I live in. So in the world where I live in, I have not only the objects, but I also feel the emotions, and I also have deep thoughts, which actually creates this whole world, right? Creates destruction. All that happens at this level. So at the mind level, I'm just feeling things. So that is the aspect. So this bottom part is the world in which we live in. And I'm interacting with this world at this level of body, mind, through the body, mind, intellect. I take on the roles of the perceiver, feeler, and thinker.
Thank you so much. Now it's 100% clear. Thank you so much.
Sure. No problem. Now, this is the bottom part of it, which is the So now if we take this level higher, what this chart is trying to say, this is Swami Chinmayananda who has conceived of this chart from the Shastras, So looking at the information which is there in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutras, all this Prasthanatrayi, right? So he has come up with this beautiful thing, which to say that at the end of the day, what is pervading everywhere is nothing but that supreme consciousness. Okay. Now, this whole chart can be taken at the individual level or at the collective level. For the moment, we are looking at it at the individual level. So at the individual level, like between each one of us, what is it that distinguishes us? So we all have a body, we all have a mind, we all have an intellect. But how I perceive this whole world through being a perceiver, feeler, and thinker is based upon this DNA, which I'm putting up here. We call in scientific terms, we will say it is the DNA in our body, which makes each one of us different, right? Now, in our Shastras, we are using this term called vasanas. Okay. In Tamil, we have this word vasanai, right? Why is that a rose has a different vasanai than a mogra,
Correct.
jasmine flower. What
Mhm.
makes it different? So for us too, it is our own vasana which is different, So
Mhm.
this DNA is the one, or the vasanas, which makes each one of us different. Now, this vasanas is the reason why I think of myself as this. So at the end of the day, there is this. If I look at the consciousness, supreme consciousness, that is the principle which is unattached. Okay. But through vasanas, when it gets attached, when it thinks, because of the attachment, it thinks that I'm this particular body, mind, intellect, then that leads to the whole individuality. Okay. So the idea behind what this chapter is coming to is the fact that I am that absolute consciousness, but I mistake myself because of this. And because I mistake myself of this, I go through all the ups and downs of this world.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem. I know for many of you, you're already familiar with it, but in the context of this chapter, I wanted to bring this thing. So from 14th onwards, 14th shloka onwards, now we see about how we are talking about those people who have recognized the delusory nature of the world. Okay. And at the end of the day, I have to have a goal, right? And I have to have the destination, which is how I started this whole lecture here. So here he's saying that those people who have recognized that the world is nothing but a delusion, moghasha, mogha karmanaha, that was the shloka here, right? Or in 12, I think. Yeah, 12 here. So then here he's trying to show that there are those people called Mahatmas who have understood that absolute nature, that divine nature, and they've made that as the ashrita or the substratum. Such people, they know me as the imperishable source of all. They know me as this absolute consciousness, So that is why he says they worship me with a mind devoted to nothing else. So they are now turning their minds not below, but they're turning the minds above, okay, to the consciousness. So that is why he says they worship with the mind devoted to nothing else, and they know me as the imperishable source. Every word, everything is so beautifully, so beautifully put here, because they know that at the level of body, mind, intellect, at the level of the world, though everything is perishable, but at the level of the consciousness, it is imperishable. So they know me as imperishable. So such people are we are not just talking about the people, but how they view that absolute Brahman. Okay, so that is where the shloka 14th, from where we started. So he says, those people who now have recognized my true nature, they are constantly praising me. Again, just using this Facebook as a kind of a thing. Today, we are praising ourselves. Okay. We praise ourselves, we are glorifying ourselves and putting it out there into this virtual world. But these people, they are going out of that thing. They are looking the other way and they are glorifying me. And not only that, yatantaha cha dhridavrataha. They are so convinced about it that they're able to be completely firm in their in what they're trying to pursue, and they do it with complete devotion. And so here, look at the word devotion, which is bhakti, we say, right? Bhaktya ananya. He's ever steadfast in namasyantaha chamam bhaktya. So they are completely, totally surrendering to me. So today, when we look at this word namasyantaha, prostrating, it doesn't necessarily mean just, I touch the feet of my elders and great people, but it is with complete understanding that, they have understood this knowledge. So, namasyantaha chamam bhaktya. So, they're completely prostrate before me. Here he says about Krishna, right? Because in previous shlokas, he had already indicated about how people are unable to recognize Krishna. So here he says these people completely recognize me and they are ever nitya yukta upasate. They spend their time completely thinking about me only. So kirtayantaha and unceasing. So we saw this. And then in shloka 15, he starts to talk about the jnana marga. So in these 14 to 19, there is actually elements of karma yoga is there, elements of upasana yoga, which is this aspect of meditating upon that Lord, And then also we have the jnana yoga, which is through shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. Here we understand that jnana yoga through complete understanding. So jnana yajnena cha api anye. So here again he's saying others meaning those people who recognize me in my true self. Jnana yajnena cha api anye yajanto mam upasate. So this is the upasana thing that I was also telling you. They worship me or they in different ways. Others as a sole support or as duality or as the all face. So here again, people recognize him as he is that, as one entity, or whether he is other than me, or whether he is that form in many different people. So in all this, he says, people have no problems at all in recognizing that aspect because they have understood at the end of the day that supreme God principle takes on these different forms. So then in Shloka 16, he goes on to go to say that ultimately there is not this many things, but it is that only one element, aham krituhu. I am that sacrifice, and I am that offering. I am the aushadam. I am the mantra. I am the ghee. I am agnihi. I am everywhere. So I am the fire. I am the oblation. All these things. So again, if we have to take this literally into what we do today, right? We are constantly only offering things to ourselves. Whatever I do, we say that, ultimately I'm the one who's supreme. Any action I do, I'm doing it for myself. But here, these people, they look at the entire world as nothing but Brahman, as that consciousness. And once you think of that consciousness, then where that consciousness is not outside me, it is in me, and I am that consciousness. So if I'm that consciousness, I have to be in everything, right? It's like the water and the wave example that we said, when the wave thinks that it is that wave, then it is that form and it is the force and everything, then the wave thinks that it is separate. But the minute the wave thinks that it is nothing but water, okay, then where is that water? The water is in everything. So I am that water. So if I am that water, then I have to be in and through not just the wave, but also the bubble, the froth, those big waves, small waves, everywhere. That is what I am, right? So that is the same thing which is out here, which is aham krituhu, aham yagniha. I am that offering. I am that herbs. I am that mantra. Anything and everything, I am that aspect. So this just another very beautiful meditative verse here, because again, those days, Vedic rituals were part and parcel of everyone's life, right? So they spent a lot of time in this, that is the people who recognize that ultimate. So they did that. But today, we don't do that much amount of Vedic rituals. But if we start doing it, then we'd see really the value of it. But we can also, for example, take even the simple mundane things. Like, for example, if I'm cooking for my family, right? When I'm cooking for my family, when I'm in front of my stove, I can look at, the fire. I'm just converting that Vedic ritual into an action that we do. I see Ishvara in that flame. I see Ishvara in let's say I'm making my sambar or something. I see Ishvara in the spices. I see Ishvara in that dal. I see Ishvara in the vegetables. I see Ishvara in the oil. I also see Ishvara in the knife that I'm using to cut the vegetables. So that's so that I can take that as a ritual. If I'm working, like even when I'm talking to you, for example, you're all Ishvara, the computer is Ishvara, my talking is Ishvara. In and through everything, I am looking at the world as nothing but that Ishvara. So, Krishna is trying to really, for us in today's world, redefining our actions. So, how can we again take this into the world that our younger generation are living in, where everything is about the screen? Instead of again just divinizing each and every action, we can still work through technology. I just have to look at everything as ritual. So that is the beauty of what here he's trying to say. Aham krituhu, I am yajnaha, everything is nothing but just me and me alone. So it is, at the end of the day, it is just divinizing the attitude in which I'm doing all my actions. So we did this Brahmarpanam last time. Then next, he's coming to the aspect of how not just in actions, now it is a question of my relationships with the world. So when we come to relationships, here we're talking about, he's bringing the words like Pita, Mata, Pitamaha, grandfather, grandsire, right? So Pitaham, I am the, you can look at it, I'm the creator, I'm also the bed in which, things are happening. So Pita, I'm the creator, Pitaham, Jagataha, I'm the Pita, I'm the Mata, Dhata, the sustainer, or the support, Then Vedyam Pavitram Omkaraha, I am that absolute Om also. So that also is nothing but just me. And then Rik Sama Yajurevacha. So I don't know if you noticed something here. He hasn't really discussed all the four Vedas, and that was interesting. I found, like when I was reading Gurudev's Bhagavad Gita book, there he has explained about, how he's not really gone into explaining Atharva Veda. So he said Rik, Sama, and Yajur, So many times Atharva is also combined with one of the Vedas here. And in Atharva Veda, actually, there is more of the applied knowledge, like, Arthashastra and all that. Arthashastra, not the one which Kautilya wrote, but Arthashastra as in the Shastra of Artha, of the knowledge of how things work. So all that. So Atharva Veda is sort of missing, but you can also look at another interpretation is that it is combined in all these three Vedas, as part of that. So here he talks about, I'm also the Vedas, the Rig, Sama, Yajur. So again, bringing that whole aspect of, I'm not separate from you. I am there in you. I am there everywhere. I am there in all the relationships. So that's where the shloka is very important. And then this next shloka, next thing, he talks about a series of pointers which will help us even more in our bhakti, in developing that bhakti or devotion, to God. One second, let me get my phone to make sure not running over time. I'm not able to see the time otherwise. And this was another question that I had for my students yesterday about how, how do you see your time? Do you, because most people don't wear a watch, you use your phone to check your time, right? So this shloka is, again, it's about really that Lord where there is Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Sharanam Suhrita Prabhava Pralaya Sthanam Nidhanam Bijam Avyayam. So going to the level of even higher, where Gatihi Bharta, I am the nourisher. I'm the nourisher of the world. I'm that ultimate goal, Bharta Prabhu Sakshi. And I'm the witness of everything that is happening. A very meditative shloka, actually. And I'm the Sharanam, I'm the refuge. And Suhrita, I'm also a well-wisher. This word Suhrita has also come before, I think in chapter 3, where um, uh, different relationships with people was explained. So I'm a well-wisher. Then Prabhavaha, I'm the origin. I'm also the dissolution. I'm the dissolver. So Prabhava Pralaya Sthanam. And I am the bija. I'm the imperishable bija also. So Nidhanam Avyayam. So I'm all this. So all very beautiful, basically just pointers for us to focus upon that absolute Lord. So it's almost, there are 12 pointers of that Ishvara. So of course, if we go through Vishnu Sahasranamam, where there's 1,000 pointers, the same thing has been expanded into almost 1,000 things, So Gatihi, which is, of course, it can also mean destination, which how we started here. And so the fruits of all our action actually leads us more closer and closer to that destination, right? So the actions are actually the means for us, and the fruits of the actions is the goal. But what do? We focus more and more on the fruit of action for us. So it takes us away from the goal. But if I make that the fruit of the action is that Ishvara, then all my actions will be tailored towards that. So Krishna says that, Ishvara is actually the highest goal that we have to aspire for. And Bharta is the controller or the supporter of the whole universe. So, when we think about the word Bharta, we immediately think about somebody who is a nourisher, somebody who takes care of me. So here he's saying Ishvara is the one who is nourishing us, who is supporting us. He's the one who is doing this whole thing. And then since he's the ultimate supporter, he's called as Prabhu, He's the ultimate master or controller. So that's why he's this. And then he's Sharanam, like we said, he's the refuge. And he's a well-wisher because he does not really expect anything from us. He's just there to give us whatever we want. And then he's the creator, he's a dissolver, and therefore he's the Prabhavaha, Pralayaha, and he's the Sthanam, he's the foundation also. And he's also Nidhanam indicating that he's a place, he's a repository from where you have all these beings, they come into creation. Okay. And because he's a repository from where all the creations come, he's that bijam, he's the seed that has created this universe. So that's why he is that. But in spite of all this, he is avyayam. By himself, he is not going through all these modifications. He by himself is imperishable. He is avyayam. So this is one of the most meditative shlokas, for that absolute Lord. So then the last shloka in this particular thing, he keeps continuously saying that, we have to see Ishvara everywhere instead of only looking at it in things and places that where with our 5 senses, we find things to be pleasurable. So we use our 5 senses only to get some pleasure out of things. So he says we have to go beyond that. And so let's see the shloka here. So he says, Tapami aham varsham nigrhnami utsrajami cha amritam cha eva mrityu cha sat asat cha aham, O Arjuna. So he says that, so far I've explained everything which you can see by your five senses. Now I'm going to tell you something which is even beyond. Like he's saying, I'm the heat in the sun. So when it is extreme, when it gets extremely hot, like how it is right now here in Kerala, I have to recognize that it is Ishvara that is providing the energy for even the sun. And even though I feel very uncomfortable, I have to recognize that Ishvara is actually thinking about the welfare of the whole world. So a good thing for looking at climate warming, all this warming which happens. So it's because the heat has to be there, because at some point rain has to come. So how is rain going to come? The rain can happen only when the heat is produced and the water is evaporated, it forms clouds, and then finally you get this word thing, right? And then he says, whenever you think about immortality, that's where I am. Okay. So symbolically, what he's trying to say that Ishvara is infinite. Only finite things go through changes, but he's beyond that. So he wants us to remind ourselves that he is that Amritam or immortality. And he's also in that death, which is also beyond our sense of mortality. So then the question will come is, how do I really develop this vision of it? So I can develop the vision only when I know what is Sat and what is Asat, right? So just because something is perceived by my senses, okay, it does not automatically become real. Again, going back to my Facebook example, we look at Facebook things, we feel it's real and we get affected by it. But at the end of the day, it is nothing but an illusion. So with that, he's just trying to say that, I am immortality, I'm death, I'm also death, because death is something we cannot comprehend by our senses. So both existence and non-existence, I am in that Sat, but I'm also in that Asat. So with this, we finish one more section of that in chapter 9, where we see how the Mahatmas look at God and what is the nature of God. So we will stop here. And next week, we'll get into the section from shloka number 20 onwards. But any questions or thoughts? We still have just 2 minutes. I thought I'll open it up.
Hari Om. This is it's question thought kind of a thing. In verse 13, Mahatma, but the Mahatmas, O Partha, partaking of my divine nature. In verse 13, he's talking about he's talking about the Ishvara part of him, or is he talking about the Brahman?
He's talking about basically, it actually doesn't matter whether you're talking about Brahman or Ishvara, as far as this shloka is concerned. But let us think about it as Ishvara, because he's the previous shloka, previous shloka, he talks about the fact that people look at Ishvara or people look at Krishna, for example, and they're unable to recognize. But here he says, those people who recognize Krishna for their divine nature, for who he really is, which is the apara nature, that apara, the para
nature.
Right.
And the following ones also, the way I'm interpreting it is he's talking about Ishvara, the one Brahman with the form. He's talking about
correct.
everything is about Ishvara. He's not yet
Correct.
started talking
No.
about the Brahman.
No. I'm glad you caught on that one. Yes, that is true. He is talking about Ishvara because it is only at the level of Ishvara that everything is possible. We see the creation, everything, right? So that is why he is coming to that level, and he says they worship me with devotion. Again, the word bhakti, it's a very, very powerful word.
Yes.
So bhakti is not just at the level of the form, it's not blind faith.
No.
Okay, it is something faith with understanding that Ishvara is the form of that Brahman. So they worship me with complete devotion. Yeah.
I think it's only in verse 19 over here we see that both existence and non-existence are mine. He's
Correct.
coming to that Sat and Asat. He's coming to Ishvara and Brahman. I think
Correct.
that's how I'm understanding.
Yes. So I'm immortality. He also explains that I am that immortality, which, beyond and also death, both. Yes, very good.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. So if anyone has any more thoughts on this, we can take it up for reflection next week when we meet. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.